Hello everyone, Professor Toybox here along with Aladdin, and today I'm going to show you how to set up an economy system in your toy box, which provides players with money that they can use to buy toys. In my case, I'm going to set up an economy system that will allow the player to bribe the guard here to get the key to the palace dungeon. To save time, I've already dropped most of the creativity toys that I'm going to need, and I'll come into Spark mode here and show you what I've got. So I've dropped down 2 buttons, a level starter, a text displayer, a dynamic trigger, and a radar marker. And I've also placed the townsperson that we're going to use for our shopkeeper, for the guard that we're going to bribe, and I've set his behavior to stand still. And you'll find him under the 2.0 playset townspeople. He's the UN Male Delegate 2 from the Avengers playset. And I'm also going to need the gate for the palace dungeon, and that sits right in this little opening right over here, just like that. Okay, now to get the key to this gate, we're going to have to buy it from this guard, and for that we need the economy system. And there are 3 toys that make up the economy system. So if we come into the Creativity Toys drawer, you'll have to buy each of these toys from the toy store to unlock them, but the first toy that we're going to need is the Money Manager, and we'll drop that right over here. And this lets you choose the kind of object you want to use as money. Next, you'll need the Storefront, and this lets you choose the toys that you want to sell to your players. And we also need the Inventory Manager, and this lets you control how the players use the toys that they buy. There are some additional creativity toys that go along with these, such as the Loop Drop Manager and Treasure Chests, as well as the Editor Manager, but I'm going to cover those in a separate video next time. Now, before we make an economy system, I highly recommend making a backup copy of your toy box. And so you want to come into the menu, go to Save, and do a new save. And I've already done that and created an Agrabah Build 2 toy box. And I'll explain why you want to do this in a few minutes, but you want to make at least 1 backup copy, maybe 2 or 3. Now to set up an economy system, the first thing we need is money. And for that, we'll come into Spark mode and we'll set up the Money Manager. And the Money Manager tells the other toys what kind of money that we're using. As we come into the properties, there's the money type, and we have a number of options available here that you can choose. And I'm going to use gold. This would be equivalent to the gold coins that was available in 2.0. So I'll select that. And then there's the starting amount, and this is the amount of money that the player is going to start the game with. And I'm actually going to leave this set at 0, but because I don't have today any way to acquire money, we're going to cover that next time. I'm going to go ahead and set this for today to 50 as my starting amount. And now the Money Manager is set up and ready to go. Oh, and you'll notice that it incremented by 10, and I'll address that in a little bit more in a moment. Now the next thing we need is a way for the player to spend the money that they earn. And so the Storefront is the toy that lets us configure that. This lets us control the toys that the player can buy, and it also provides the user interface that the player will interact with. And we have 2 options for populating this. We can copy the items that we set up in the Inventory Manager, which I haven't done that yet, but whatever we set up as their starting inventory, you can copy those items into the Storefront, and that's what would be available for sale here. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to manage them myself. So I'll select Manage Items for Sale, and that opens up this menu, and I can select the plus sign there, and that opens up a menu that gives you access to all of the drawers and most of the toys in those drawers. And I'm going to scroll over here to the left, and I'm looking for the Gameplay Toys drawer because that's the one that holds the key. And you'll notice the drawers are not in the same order, so it can take a little while to find what you're looking for. But in the Gameplay Toys drawer, I need the key, so I'm scrolling down and looking for the key, and you'll notice they're not in the same order here either. We have the locking gate wall and the locking gate cage, but the key is nowhere to be found, so we got to keep scrolling to find that. And if we go down a little further, there's the key. So I'll select that and close that menu. And now we've selected the toy that this storefront will sell, which would be the key. And I can select A on my Wii U, as the menu shows at the bottom, to adjust the price. And initially the item cost is 10, so this would be 10 gold coins to buy this key. And you'll notice that it increments in numbers of 10. So there's no way to sell a key for 5 gold or 15 gold. You can set it to 0, and basically the storefront will give you the key for free. But one thing you want to be careful though of, if you start setting items too high, and you can set this all the way up to 1,000. The problem though, setting it too high, is that enemies and chests will only give you 1 coin at a time. And so if you set that too high, it's going to take forever to get the money that you need to buy the item. So you want to be very careful with that. And I'm going to leave this set at the default of 10. So it'll cost me 10 gold coins to buy that key. And now the storefront is ready to go. We just need to hook that up. Before we do that though, let's go ahead and talk about the inventory manager, which is the last piece that we need. The inventory holds all the toys that the player has available to them, and it allows the player to use those toys. And in the properties, we can specify the inventory that the player will start with. Initially, I'm going to leave this empty. So all I really need to do is just drop this inventory manager in my toy box like I've done, and it's ready to go. But if you wanted to, you could set a starting inventory. And as I said, I don't need that for mine, but I'm going to go ahead and do that just to show you how it works, because I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to get to these toys in an episode of Toy Box Tutorials. It'll be a while. But for a starting inventory, we can give him a horse, for example, and then come back over to the left. And I was thinking maybe one of the default toys to start with would be under Gameplay Toys. We could give him a health capsule. And if we drop that down, or scroll down here, that's right underneath the key, if I remember right, near the bottom of the list. There we go. And so now the player will have 2 items to start with. And if we select the horse, the menu at the bottom changed, and I can press A on my Wii U to adjust the count. By default, the item count is INF, and that stands for infinite. So I can drop as many horses as I have memory for. 1 is probably sufficient, so I'll set the count to 1. And just to show the difference, I'll leave the count for the health capsule set at infinite. And again, I'm going to end up removing these anyway before we're done. And so now if we had done that first, and then come over to the storefront, and we did copy items from Inventory Manager, then the only items that would be available for sale in this storefront would be the horse and the health capsule. So that's a quick way of getting those available in here without having to scroll through those lists again. But again, I'm not going to do that, so I'll cancel out of that. Now to hook the storefront up, we're going to hook it up to our townsperson over here, and we set him up pretty similar to the way we do a normal mission giver, but there's a little bit of a difference. On the radar marker, we'll do a new actor connection, and we'll make him our actor. And this is how we're going to find him. So under the properties, I'll set the beacon type to be a yellow question mark, and yellow again is for the main quest. Beacon location will be the connected actor, and I want this on by default. For the dynamic trigger, this gets set up the same way as well. So we'll connect that to our townsperson as an actor. And in the properties for this, the target isn't this creativitoy, but the connected actor. And I'm going to set the trigger distance to 4. So that'll create a 1-block radius around the townsperson. And normally this toy would invoke the text displayer, and it's not going to do that, but I still want to use a text displayer. So we'll go ahead and configure this. The text duration will be 4 seconds. Text style will be banner. And as I said, normally what we would do is on the dynamic trigger, we would do a new logic connection when entered by player, any. We would come over to the text displayer, but I'm not going to do that for this guy. Instead, I'm going to come to the storefront, and we'll select that, and I'm going to open the shopping menu for the host. And so that will display the user interface for the shop. And then we can set it up so that on the storefront, a new logic connection, when the shopping menu is closed, we can come over to the text displayer, and we can come to the farewell category, and he'll say goodbye. And so he's a little more friendly than just the menu opening and closing. I think that adds a nice little touch. So there we go. The economy system is ready to go. Now, one of the things I need to point out is that when you place these 3 toys in your toy box, by default they are deactivated. So right now they're not going to do anything even though we've configured them. In order to get them to work, we first have to activate them using a logic connection. And we have to be very careful here, because when the inventory manager is activated, it's going to take over the toy box editor and replace it. And that means we're going to be locked out of the normal toy box editor until the inventory manager is deactivated. So before we activate these toys, we need to make very sure we provide a way to deactivate them. Otherwise, if we use a level starter here, for example, like I want to do, to activate these toys, and we don't provide a way to deactivate them, we'll never be able to edit this toy box again, ever. And this is why I highly recommend saving a backup copy of your toy box before you ever set up a logic connection to activate these 3 toys. And so, just to make sure we have a way to turn these off, I'm going to hook this button up first as our way to deactivate them. And so we'll do a new logic connection when pressed. I'll come to the money manager and deactivate it. And we'll do the same thing with the storefront. And make sure we can deactivate that. And we'll do the same thing with the inventory manager. And deactivate that. So now we have a button that will turn those off. And I want to use the level starter to start those toys so that when we're all done and the player loads up the toy box, that they'll be ready to play and they don't have to do anything else. And so on the level starter, I'll do a new logic connection on catalyze, and we'll come to the money manager and activate it. And we'll do the same thing with the storefront. And the same thing with the inventory manager. And we need to activate all 3 of those toys to get the economy system working. And because we're already in the toy box, I'll use this button to invoke the level starter. And this will allow us to turn it on, turn it off, and do that at will. And I believe that's everything we need. We're ready to test it out. And before I save my toy box, I want to make sure I test this. So we'll go ahead now, and fingers crossed, this is the scary part. We'll go ahead and press the button. And now you'll notice in the upper left corner, the sparks are gone, and it's replaced the sparks with 50 coins. So our coins are there, and it's got our starting amount. So the money manager is working. And if we come into the toy box editor, you'll notice all I have available is the horse and the health capsule. And it remembers which drawer those are in, but those are the only 2 things that I have. And if I wanted to, for example, come over to this wall and press B in order to move it, it's not letting me do that. I can't move it. I can't do anything with this because it's not part of the toys that are in the toy box editor now. And so this is why we needed a way in order to turn this off. And so before we go any further, let's make sure that that works. So we'll deactivate the economy system, and you'll notice the sparks are back in the upper left corner. And if I open the editor, we now have access to everything again. Whew. Okay, so we're good to go. And at this point, we could save our toy box if we wanted, and we're all right. So let's go ahead and turn the economy system back on again. And now we have our coins. And let's go test the storefront. So we'll walk up to our townsperson, and the shop menu opens, so that's good. And at the top, we have the items that we already have in our inventory. And at the bottom, I press the down arrow down here. This is what we have available to buy, and the only thing we have is that key. And so on my Wii U, if I select the A button, that adds the key to the inventory, and you'll notice the number of coins dropped from 50 to 40. So we've successfully purchased the key.
Scraping by in the marketplace.
Thanks for interrupting me, Aladdin. And we'll go ahead and cancel out of that, and the text kicks in and says goodbye. So I think that's kind of a nice little touch. So now we've purchased the key, and if we open up the editor, we have our horse, we have our gameplay toys. Now, on the gate key, there's a number 10 there. We didn't purchase 10 keys. That's the cost that it's going to cost to place this key in the environment. But if we go up to the mounts, you'll notice there's a 1 next to that. There's no cost for placing this. The 1 is the number of horses that we gave the player by default with the starting inventory. And so the number that's on the horse and the number that's on the key are inconsistent. They mean two different things. And so because of that, I highly recommend that if you're going to use the shops, that you would set up the inventory manager to not set up a starting inventory. Because otherwise you have this confusion with the two meanings of these numbers. So if I press, put the horse in here, for example, you'll notice the count decreased to 0, and now I can't place another horse. It's not letting me. But I can come down here and place the key, and you'll notice the count didn't decrease because, again, that is a cost, not a count of number of keys in my inventory. And if I exit out of the editor, you'll notice the number of coins has dropped from 40 to 30. And so those two numbers, again, mean two different things. But at any rate, I can come over here now and pick up the key and open up the gate. And now we're good to go. And I should probably set the properties on that gate to remove the key once it's opened. But let's go ahead and turn off the economy system. Because what I really want in my economy system, and I'll go ahead and remove the horse here, and I'll remove that key. What I really want is an inventory that's empty initially, and so I want to set this up where there's no horse, there's no health capsule, and the key, it remembered what was in there. And I should probably point out that there's one inventory for the whole toy box, and so if you have two players in here, they're going to share that inventory. And so that's important, and that's why it remembered that the key was there. But I really want to start with an empty inventory. And so for the inventory manager, all I have to do initially is just drop this in the environment. I don't have to configure it. And I also want to start with nothing, no gold initially. And that's how I really want the player to start, because I want them to have to do some things to earn the money that they need. Otherwise, if they start with the money and they start with items in their inventory, there's really no point in having an economy system. So I want to make the player do some things to earn the money, and next time we'll look at the two creativity toys that provide money for the player. Until then, I want to thank you for watching my video today, and I hope you found it helpful. It's not too difficult to create an economy system. You just need to remember to activate these toys before you can use them, and to provide a way to deactivate them so you can still use the normal toy box editor. As always, I've provided a diagram on my blog that will help remind you of all the logic connections you need to make, so be sure to check that out. And if you haven't subscribed to me yet, just click my photo in the lower right corner of this video or the follow button on my blog, and that way you won't miss the next episode. See you then.